I've been around this guy for 3 years now. I've never felt a certain type of way about him. He just never rubbed me a certain way, that type of way. I mean, what he said is what he said at the end of the day, but I mean, I definitely trust him. I mean, it was 10 years ago. People grow.
Here we go.
Us as a team, we're like, yeah, Coach, it was 10 years ago. We love you, man. We got your back. We're just trying to be there to support Coach. I know it's a hard time for him. He told us, men, learn from your mistakes. When we left that meeting, we didn't take it as how it came out. And those two football players, of course, are off the Raiders team. I can't remember a lot of things that transpired 10 to 12 years ago, but I stand here in front of everyone apologizing. I don't have an ounce of racism in me. That was by the way.
That was the first.
Jon Gruden saying I don't have an ounce of racism in me was the end of it. I told my son yesterday, I said he's going to get fired. And he's like, no, he's not. I said, when you dig your heels in and say there's not an ounce of something in me, people will find it one way or another. They're going to dig until they find it. I'm a guy that takes pride in leading people together, and I'll continue to do that the rest of my life. And again, I apologize to Dr. Smith and anyone out there I've offended that from. Of course.
You see the last one?
Yeah.
That last statement, that's another one.
Yeah.
Because he apologized for two things. For anyone I may have offended, number one, and number two, and I don't like this, I don't want to be a distraction.
Yep.
That is not owning up to it. And then, yes, and then they dug, and like you said, they dug more.
Yep.
I thought there'd be a lot more to actually. I was not thinking that it would go in the direction that it went. I was thinking it might be more narrow and just more racist.
Yep.
And it puked all over the place.
Yeah, and
he just covered all.
It was unraveled from the Washington football team scandal with the Me Too movement. Of course, the whole sexist thing that went down there, where the NFL. I understand why the NFL tried to cover it up, because we always try to do damage control. When you have a business and you have salmonella in your chicken, you say it was one chicken breast, although it could have been 100 chicken breasts. You do the best you can for damage control because you don't want to look bad. And the NFL's done a pretty decent job of that, but now there's so many people out there digging and trying to find things. It makes it, but the NFL's big enough, it'll be fine. The NFL certainly, and I thought Booger McFarland did a great job. You brought up that video. Was also mentioning all the special messages, the Me Too movement, and we all, are included, and we're all inclusive, and that these messages they wear on their helmets, and a lot of that came through the Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. And we got these players out there all trying to move in the right direction. Now we get this guy who is saying all these misogynistic, homophobic, horrible things. He dropped the F word. He called Roger Goodell a puss. I mean, it went on and on and on. And I've been around enough football teams, and I know it's and if you've ever been in a locker room, they talk about locker room talk. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's F-bombs flying all over the place. I'm not saying maybe necessarily a Tony Dungy's locker room, because he was a different kind of guy. Ironically enough, he's the one guy who came out. Now, maybe it was prior to these other emails coming out, but he came out on Sunday Night Football and said, listen, the guy made a mistake. It was 10 years ago. He apologized. Let's move past it. I was really surprised that coming from a black man. Yep. This was too much. And again, a lot of those things that were said was when he was with ESPN, not with the National Football League and not with the Raiders. And so that was one of those things, well, is there anything the National Football League or the Raiders could do to this guy? Because they hired him, and you want to do enough background checks and figure out, okay, is this the right guy to hire? And obviously, 4 years into a 10-year contract, he has been released. He
resigned, right?
He got fired.
Nobody.
He got fired. Depending on who you ask, he got fired.
No, but what's the official?
He met with the owner, and the owner fired him. Now, if he wants to say, you're going to fire me, I'm going to resign ahead of time.
But that's what I was going to ask you. Just officially, he's been released, or officially he resigned?
Officially, he was fired.
He was
by the Raiders organization. Yeah, he's saying he resigned.
Well, no. No,
you always want to quit the relationship before she can back
on paper what happened.
Well, according to ESPN, he got fired.
Okay, all right, I didn't realize that. Okay,
so they can.
I mean, yes.
Does it really matter?
Yep.
Does it really matter? I mean, it's like
I was just curious.
And so I'm thinking about this thing. First of all, I like Jon Gruden. I thought he was great on Monday Night Football.
Yep.
He is a caricature. I know he was made fun of, his face, the Chucky face, the whole, and the Raiders organization. The owner of the Raiders, his dad hired John the first time when they went to the Super Bowl, and they wanted him badly, and I don't know if it would have worked out or not into his fourth year, but it seemed like the team was moving in the right direction. Carr seemed like he was getting comfortable as a quarterback, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And so this is one of those things where I don't know too many people in my life that have not used the same language that Jon used. Maybe not in an email, not in writing. And I think you bring up a great point that when you put these things, and we talked about it yesterday, you can have these thoughts. We can have these nasty thoughts. You piece of blah, 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 blah. I was yelling at a woman in a car yesterday. I let her go through and she didn't wave. And then when you put it in writing, it takes it to a whole new level because it is in writing. It's there. I mean, it will be found. We can say things on this radio program, and unless you're recording it and you're playing it, and maybe some people are, we can pretty much refute that. Say I never said that, or I said it, but it was, and it's gone. It's there's not tape of it. Okay, but everyone's recording and videoing everything now. So I don't know too many people that have used the F word.
Well, that's not the F word.
That's derogatory to us because it was a lot different back in the 70s and 80s. We've become much more cognizant of the meanings of the things.
Not derogatory. So this is where the F word is the F word. And
we're talking about faggot, by the way.
Oh, that F word.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
Was like
no, everyone uses
well,
F-bomb.
That's what I was saying.
No, I'm not worried about everyone tweets. No, you
okay.
can say the F word, F-U-C-K. Yeah. You can say that all you want.
No, but
the faggot thing is, and.
But when you said it, see, now here's the difference, because I know I was the one who said the whole, if you can think whatever you want to think. Yep. I'm going to retract that a little bit. We do have thoughts, and you can think whatever you want to think. But if you think the kind of things that Jon Gruden wrote,
yep,
then you need to check yourself. Like, you shouldn't think. If those things come into your head, you better have a part of your brain that says, what's wrong with me?
I agree.
I'm always espousing on the show, think whatever you want to think as long as you don't act on it. And I really shouldn't say that. If you're having those kinds of thoughts, then something is wrong with you.
Yep.
And at the very least, those kind of thoughts should be your own wake-up call and go, damn, like, why am I thinking this way? But yes, carry it all the way through, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Having the thoughts is bad, and you have a chance to do something before the world sees. When I do something, I mean, talk to somebody, go to a clergy, talk to somebody about it. Then once you put it out in writing, now it's out there, and at best you can apologize for it. And then anything beyond that is just, and again, this is where Gruden, when you say that's not me, that's not who I am. It's the classic. That's not me. That's not who I am. That is you. That is who you are.
Yeah. Like, you just don't like that part of you.
You're right.
That is. I mean, that's like that's when you fly off the handle and throw a shovel in your backyard or whatever. That's not me. That's not who I am. Well, it obviously is because you did it. That's a part of you don't like. And I think that would be a proper way of maybe trying to say, listen, I made a mistake here. I said some things I shouldn't have said, and that's not who I want to be.
Yep.
And
Michael Vick and dog fighting.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think it was obviously it was larger in a different way, but he not only did he explain where it came from, he explained, or he said, this is completely wrong. Again, he was in jail, and it was horrible. And Jon Gruden's not going to be in that position. It's going to be super interesting to see what Jon Gruden says, if he says anything, down the line later. Now, I was in the gym today, and you'd be proud of me because I didn't say anything.
Yep.
But as I'm moving around and different exercise, I heard two or three conversations. I mean, everybody was talking about it, it's on the TV. And I heard two guys are like, can you believe they did that? Can you believe? I mean, come on. People say things all the time. Yes, it was really dumb for him to put that in writing, but really? They're going to fire him over that? It took everything I could. I thought of you because it took everything I could to just, and it wasn't my conversation, to just walk up in the middle of them and I go, are you effing kidding me?
Yep.
But they were serious. They're like, now we've
it's because they're used to hearing it.
Yes.
I mean, they may go out and have lunch with their buddy today and they see someone that looks a little soft or gay or whatever and drop the F thing. And I mean, because it's part of our normal vernacular for a lot of people. And that's what I mean to say is I've got a lot of friends of mine who I don't consider racist or misogynistic or sexist or anything else, and they've said things in the past. Now, I don't. This whole, was it 5 years ago? Was it 10 years ago? What's too far ago? Was it 20 years ago? Was it 25 years ago? My brother, when he was 18, was jumped by three black guys in Cincinnati, Ohio. Did not like black people, and Cincinnati's a pretty racially divided city in and of itself. Took him years.
But you see what he
to
did?
realize he had to work with black people. He had to be around black people. He had to have a black person move in his neighborhood to finally realize that not all black people are muggers, and but I mean that was the traumatic situation in his brain that he felt like that everyone of color
but that's
was
irrational.
Like that.
It's totally irrational.
It is irrational.
And this is where Keyshawn Johnson.
Yep.
This is what Keyshawn Johnson said this morning, which I just, he held his own. He held his composure. Because they asked him this morning, and he had a daughter who was gay, black and gay, who, was she killed? She died.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, he made the comment, and this was the best comment that I've heard in this argument. The reason you should not be saying those things is you should not be saying terrible things about people because they're a people. And that's it. Like, you could say so-and-so is an a-hole. You could say so-and-so is a wimp. I'm being careful with my language. But you do not jump classes of people and say they are wrong because who they are.
I totally agree with you.
And he's like...
Because they have no control over it.
Right.
Black people don't have control of whether they're black or not. They were born that way.
Yes.
I believe that... In homosexuals,
women,
women, you're born that way. So,
yes,
to take it biblically, you're basically pointing your finger at God, saying you made a mistake here, and God doesn't make mistakes.
Oh, look at that!
Everyone that He made is through His eyes, and you're loved. Period. Because God created you, and if God created you, and you're making fun of that creation, then you're making fun of what God's doing, and I ain't going there.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. Now. Again, like you said, if you make mistakes during your life and you're just a total a-hole or you're mean to people, whatever, then feel free to go ahead and say, listen, I'm calling you out on this because you're not created with that hate in your heart.
That's right.
The other part of me, again, is I don't want Jon Gruden to be remembered. I don't have a dog in this fight. But I don't want Jon Gruden's entire legacy to be rememred for this.
See, but this is where
because I think he's done a lot of and most of the people he worked at ESPN for 7-10 years.
Yeah.
Most of the people were really surprised.
Yes.
Some people weren't that were in his really close knit circle, but the majority of people that knew him as a leader and as a great guy and as a fun guy and a guy that had this ESPN gig and he was great and he was his character and people loved him. Knew him as a great guy, and most black people, when Mike Tirico came out and said, I never heard him use any of those things. Well, maybe it's because he's around you,
but
and you're black,
yes.
and so he's not going to be dropping those bombs, around you specifically. That's a scary thought when you have someone that you trust, that you like, that you think is a supporter of yours, and you understand them and you trust them, and then you find out they're a totally different animal. I'm not saying that he uses material or this type of vernacular everywhere he went or whenever he did it or and so it's just amazing. I think it's just incredible how quick you can be here and then be here.
Well, but it's based on your action, because I think that's important. And this is where I was going to go, just trample on these guys who were talking about this, because it was come on, we all say things. No, we all say things, but we all don't use derogatory, stereotypical, racial, misogynistic, homophobic slurs.
Yeah.
But to me, that's important. That's how you go from here to here. If you called somebody an a-hole in an email, Roger Goodell is an a-hole, a dumbass, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's a shit. I mean, you could go on and on. Then maybe you went from here to here.
But you're not losing your job over it.
No, but what he did is, and this is the thing, it's interesting to me. People are like, well, it's terrible, but it was a long time. It's that bad.
Yeah. It's
that bad. You don't say things about people that way. You shouldn't even think that way, but we never know what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And this is what I think this is what you're commenting on. You don't become... you're not homophobic, misogynistic, and racist in words, and then say, well, I'm not because that's not how I act when I'm around those people.
Yep. Great point.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
That just means you're being careful.
Yeah. Or you're tolerating them.
Yeah. I mean, you're coexisting. I mean, this is why you go from here to here. And I know you paint this all the time. It should not color their. It should not describe their book of work, but it does. Like it doesn't say that the good things he did weren't good. Absolutely. But the bad things you did now have painted your whole picture, and they outweigh it.
Yeah. It's almost because we're a very we love comeback stories.
Absolutely.
We love when people make mistakes and make things right. And you brought up Michael Vick. A lot of people said that he would never play football
I think he's
again,
a good
and he came
example,
back and
don't
he was the only guy that got $200 million deals, one before and one after.
That's right.
You'd almost be better off doing something illegal, paying your due, and then we accept you back. But when you do something that, because he's not going to prison for this.
No.
He lost his job.
Right.
He's not going to spend any time behind bars for what he did. But if he did, and it was something that was illegal, right, we would go, okay, you're paying your debt to society. You're going to be put in prison for 6 months. You come out, and we would open our arms and say, okay,
well, but we'd watch you. Changed? We'd watch you when you came out. Again, Michael Vick
because we don't know how to fix this.
Right. It's not funny, but
how do you fix it? Now I'll speak from from an example. My dad lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I never considered my dad racist. He was told as a little boy he wasn't allowed to play with any of the black kids in the neighborhood or else he'd get grounded or whipped for it, which is, when he told me that, I was like, totally. My brother, who I consider one of my best friends, used to be the first one to drop the N jokes when I used to go up and visit, and I laughed. Sometimes I told some until I realized just what I was doing. I thought, this is horrible. This is terrible. And a lot of it had to do with what my brother's trauma was when he was in school. And
how did you know it was terrible? Even though you did it, like what made you think it was terrible? Because I think this is important.
I think a lot of it was how it was told. I just realized, and I was in my 30s. I just remember thinking one time I kind of had an epiphany of belittling other people based on what God created them as. Is and we used to tell Pollock jokes. Remember we used to tell Pollock jokes? There was a whole phase, for people who don't know, there was a whole 10-year, 15-year period where Pollock jokes were really hot. We would how stupid Pollocks were.
Right.
Polish people.
Now listen, I remember
there was a Pollock book. There was a book.
I know.
That was a bestseller of Polish jokes, Pollock jokes.
I'm of Polish descent.
Yeah, and it was funny.
It was.
And it was like Auburn, Alabama jokes. Insert ethnicity here.
Right.
And you could have used it for anybody, right? And I remember telling us Pollock jokes. I remember doing school, and it was hilarious. We didn't have any Polish people up in Cincinnati. Or if we did, we didn't know who they were because they were laughing at it too.
Nothing.
We really did. It was just white, pasty white people. But when I adopted my two boys, who are Latino, that's where it really became clear to me, because when my brother told that joke the first time, I said, you're bigger than this. And I realize that whenever you make fun of other people, it's always an insecurity. It's always you're insecure in your own stuff. If you feel the need to have to belittle or bully or put other people down, you got your own issues. And I tell my daughter that, whenever her big brother gives her a hard time, I was like, it's because he's insecure with himself. He's giving you a hard time for crying over there, and he's lying on the couch, crying his ass off because he's afraid to go to school tomorrow. Okay, I said, just let it go. I'll take care of him, right?
Your daughter's going to be the most powerful woman.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, look at him. He's over there sobbing, and he's giving you a hard time. I said, just remember that and be compassionate. Say, Santo, what's wrong? What can I do? And I promise you, he'll see that eventually. And so when I adopted our Latino boys, I went to my brother and I said, listen, that's no longer funny to me. You'll never hear that word come out of my mouth again. I don't think it's funny. And by saying that, you're basically talking about your kids aren't black. I said, no, but they're Latino and they're next. And I said, it's easy to make jokes about Latinos, too, because they're different. And stereotypically, they have jobs that we don't want and blah, 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 blah. And from that point on, I never heard him say or tell another joke or use that N-word again. And, he talked about a guy that he used to work with. It's God's funny guy. He linked my brother up with a black man at General Electric for about 10 years. And he said, okay, Jeff, you're working with Willie. And he's like, really? He's like, yeah, you and Willie are going to be partners from here on out on this project for like the next 10 years. And it made my brother work through it. And he saw the cultural differences and the ethnicity and all these different things. And so my brother grew into that. Okay. But it took years and years and years to get that seed out, because we're not born racist. It's a seed that's planted somewhere in our lives, whether it's through friends or family or anything else.
Right.
And so with Jon Gruden, how do we know when he's reformed? How do we know when he gets it? How do we know? Because it's real easy to get it when you lose your job.
You're right. Right.
When you get fired for, you're like, "Ooh, I got to change my ways."
Well,
okay,
it's Michael Vick. So I think a couple things without going too deep into your brothers. Even if your brother had this traumatic experience of being mugged by 3 black men, how old was he? Roughly
18. He was in high school.
Okay,
he was skipping school to go get food tickets. Yeah,
but so in that moment, or in the days after, I can understand where it comes from. I'm afraid these men represent, everybody who's like this does this. Somebody needed to intervene there, right? Even at 18, somebody needed to say to him when he's talking to your parents or he's talking to someone, hey man, these guys were bad guys, but the way you're talking right now is not right, because that was the moment. I get being scared. I also, let's just say this, I also get being with PTSD, being triggered. You see another black person, but and again, this is where it gets different. If you see a black male who is roughly the same size as someone who mugged you, I get that. Now, if you see a black female and you're still upset and angry, now I'm starting to. I'm scratching my head.
Well, that's guilt by association.
That's but here's where we go, and that's where somebody. It's unfortunate, but that was the opportunity to change his trajectory from this is what black people are to this is what these 3 people were, and that's the problem with Jon Gruden is we're not going to know. Here's the only way we're going to know. This is the Michael Vick story. Is what are you going to do? Apologizing doesn't matter. I mean, you have to do that. Yep. You don't apologize, and good riddance. Like, you don't apologize. You use all the BS. This is a distraction. So you apologize. I am sorry. I should have never said these things. I understand now how derogatory they were, blah, 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 blah. Now what? What you going to do? How are you going to learn from your mistakes? Am I never going to say it again? Okay.
Yeah, because if you feel it, then you're not changed.
Right.
And so that's really interesting. Is there a class? Is there,
well, what did
Michael Vick worked for the ASPCA.
Yeah, I mean, right.
So, I mean, he enveloped it. He went in and he's like, listen, I don't know if he still wants to fight dogs.
Yeah, no,
if Michael Vick could have a dog fight right now and not get caught, would he do it?
Well, I don't know. We don't know. And that we have to look. When it comes to people.
But because he served time behind bars and lost hundreds of millions of dollars, we were like, okay, he's lost enough.
Plus the work that he did.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, we never know. And this goes for relationships. Look, I never know. If you cheat on me, I will never know, and this is the hardest thing in relationships, I will never know if you're thinking about cheating again. Never. All I will know, and all I can go on in terms of my trust, if I can ever trust you again, is based on everything and anything that you do that I see.
And here's the difference. As the person who's made the mistake, you have to want to see the other side, and you have to want to change.
That's right.
Because you can sit there and say, I'll never use the N-word again, or I'll never do this again, or I'll never act a certain way, I'll never use the word homo again, I won't use the F word. Okay, but if you're still thinking,
right,
damn it, man, it'd be a perfect time to say this here right now, but I can't do it because then nothing has changed.
Right.
And so that's the hard part, because to change someone's personality or change the way they feel, or that seed that's been planted, is incredibly difficult. And so with Jon Gruden, I don't know. It's unfortunate because I think he's a great coach and I think he's good for the game, or at least I thought he was. And I don't want to see. I don't know what he's going to do now. Do you write a book next? I mean, the guy's going to make a living. I'm assuming he's got millions of dollars. He should be good. I think he's in his 50s or 60s, early 60s.
Well, that was the other thing they kept saying, is it's generational.
Is he just
No,
but I mean, this was only, and it's funny because it was 10 years ago. It was 10 years ago. That's not that long ago.
Right.
When they're talking about Bob Dylan screwing somebody in 1969, I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. I get it, but it's ridiculous to me because it was 50 years ago.
Right.
This was not that long ago. And this is when John, and I've worked at ESPN. I've been there. I was an employee there for a period of time. They don't put up with that. Mm-mm. They don't put up with that. They're probably one of the most mutual exclusive type of companies where they try to have a meshing pot of as many different types of, whether they're doing it just for the look, perception, or because it's the right thing to do. They do the best they possibly can. And this is not something that, and it's funny because they haven't said a whole lot about it because he was working for ESPN at that time. And, it's certainly, but he's no longer an ESPN employee, so he's kind of like, okay, he's gone. They could say, well,
that's exactly. They're probably separate. Listen, this is why we have.
I don't know how you fix it. I don't know how you fix it.
Well, you don't. I mean, you don't ever know if you're going to fix it. Well, first of all, we don't fix it for John. John fixes it. John has to realize that I have a hate, dislike, fear, whatever it is, for women, for people who are homosexual, and people who are black. And if he says, no, of course I don't. Well, then why did you tell Roger Goodell that you shouldn't hire faggots?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you're a pussy for hiring women.
Yep.
That you've said that. So if you say you don't hate that, then it's there. Show me that you want to change and think differently by doing things, by sitting down with a group of people. And I don't mean sitting down with the cameras rolling.
Yeah.
Right? Again, this is not a thing. And here's the other thing. From a public figure standpoint, we can't judge. I mean, there's nothing. This is so far beyond. Like, there ain't nothing that we're going to be able to see that's going to be able to say, well, Jon Gruden's good. Because he could do all kinds of things that would say that he's good. This is a much deeper thing. And this is on you, Jon Gruden, as a person. This is your call. Like you said, you got money. And this was these guys. I heard these guys in the gym. This is what they're saying. They're like, if you just lays low for a while, lays low for a couple of years, he'll be picked up because he's a great football coach. Yep. And that was the other thing. I was trying to articulate this. You are not a great football coach if that is what your beliefs and sayings are. You're not a great football coach.
Well, you're not a good leader. You could be a good football coach. You could be good at X's and O's. You could put your players in the right spots.
That's it. Well, that's what I was.
But you're not a good leader. Yeah, you're not a good leader.
That's a tactician.
Well, what John needs to do right now is he needs to come out as quickly as possible and admit why he said what he did. Mm-hmm. And don't say, if I offended anyone, you've offended him. We already know you offended a bunch of people. If I offended anyone, I'm sorry. If you offended anybody, you offended people. Okay, you did, whether you like it or not. And say, we're in this testosterone-driven football thing, and I said some really stupid things, and obviously, if I said them, I must believe them to an extent, and for that, I'm going to try to change, and I'm going to try to do the best I possibly can to understand the homosexual community, or Roger Goodell, or women in the workplace, because we're all moving on. We're moving on. You either come with us, like you said, you either come with us, right, or you're going to be stuck in that 1950s, that 1960s way of thinking.
Yes.
And if he comes out and does all that and is true to his character and who he is, because there's a lot of people rooting for him. They like him. It's interesting because a lot of people like Jon Gruden and they think he was good for the game.
Well, they liked him and he let them down.
Yeah, and he let me down. I mean, he let a lot of fans down. I mean, I hate it. I liked him on ESPN. I thought he was great on Monday Night Football. I thought he was different, and I loved his snarling face, and I liked to watch him on the sideline.
Absolutely, but it is up to us. Listen, and if anybody,
but he needs to come clean because right now you've lost your job, and so you can do it. You can come out and say, listen, man, I did not realize that my way of thinking was so far out of kilter, and now I'm realizing, and I don't know if that means getting therapy. I don't know if that means talking to
go do whatever you need to do.
The youth league. I don't know what that means.
Well, that's exactly, and it has to be done. That's what I'm saying. There's all this stuff that could be done for public purposes, even if he meant it. This is the problem Jon Gruden has. You can say that you're going to do all these things, and those things may help you change, and that's good.
Yeah.
The problem is, can you redeem yourself in our eyes? Well, we don't know, because we don't know what you think.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what you think. And the other thing, which I think is just really rough, is this whole I have offended people, and for that I am sorry. Great, you need to come out and say that. Now you need to go away. And I don't mean lay low. You need to come out as a different person.
Yeah.
We need to... let me rephrase that. For your sake, you need to become a different person. We don't need to see it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't... And the people rooting for Jon Gruden, what are you rooting for?
Yep.
I think that's an interesting... what is it that are you rooting for him, what? To come back? Are you rooting for him to become a changed man?
For a changed man to be forgiven eventually. Because we all make mistakes. We all say stupid things. And again, I know a lot of people that have used that same language. I haven't heard it in a long period of time.
Yeah.
But I know them as decent people, and I look at them and go, dude, come on. I haven't heard any of that language, in at least inside my circles, in a long period of time.
But do you think it's because they don't believe it, or do you think it's because they know not to say anything? And some people.
I don't know. And if you believe it and you're not willing to change, then you damn sure better be careful what you say, because eventually it's going to come out. If that's who you are and that's what you believe,
yes.
Then and it's easy when you're talking about football, because it has been a man's sport for a long period of time. I lived next to a lineman that played in the 50s and 60s, and man, the things I'd hear from him is like,
right.
He was all about that type of language, and I'd laugh.
Right.
Yeah, he showed up that he was soft and he must have been gay and blah blah blah, and I'm like, but yeah, I think eventually, I think someone will give him a shot. Someone will give him a shot.
Okay, great.
And I will use the Hugh Freeze situation, in that it wasn't a misogynistic or you can make a case of a sexist because he was calling 1-900 numbers,
right?
And that really kind of bit him in the butt, because he was a guy, he was sitting there reciting biblical scripture on his Twitter account. Next thing you know, he's calling 900 numbers. Well, I know a lot of people that read the Bible and call 900 numbers.
Well, there's a lot of people like that.
Okay,
but
but he did what he had to do, and that is he took a job that was well beneath his coaching success.
Okay,
whether that's a high school job, whether that's mentoring for big brothers and big sisters, whatever that thing is, to get back out there and to do good things. Because there's a high school team right now that would hire Jon Gruden in a heartbeat.
Which is,
now, I don't know if he'd do that. And in best case scenario, it would be a school from where he was born, a local school, maybe even the school that he went to school at. You have to wait.
What that says about the school?
You have to wait a little bit.
You know what that says about the school?
But, if you do it right.
Yes.
And he stays clean, then that school is the one that gave him the shot. Because Liberty has looked at that right now. Liberty is a school that 5 years ago you'd beat 75-0, and they're a damn good football team. And the reason they're a damn good football team is because of Hugh Freeze. And we've kind of forgotten about what Hugh Freeze is 4 or 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
They gave him the opportunity to prove that he was a different person than what we thought he was, and he's changed. I'm hoping he's changed because he's kept it.
What I'm saying, but you're putting two things together. You're lumping two things. Hugh Freeze got a job at Liberty to show that he's changed. This just shows that he can coach football.
Well, they didn't get the job to show that he's changed. They gave him the job so he would have time to change, so we could look at him differently.
So they would have.
They gave him that opportunity,
so he can make a living.
I'm sure somewhere there's Jon Gruden Field somewhere.
Jon Gruden what?
Jon Gruden Field.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming there's some high school or somewhere where he went to school because he's a celebrity. He's
right.
He's bigger than life.
But coaching at a high school, my point is, and I hope people don't use the cancel culture piece here, because he needs to be canceled. This needs to be canceled
for a period of time.
Again,
I hate the cancel thing because no one gets canceled.
Well, yeah.
He's still here. He's still living. You can cancel someone then when they're dead. The whole cancel thing is bullshit because people cancel people and 3 years later they're back.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that don't call what's happening now should not be considered canceled.
Yeah.
The second thing is, let's say a high school hires him. Okay.
There's a Chucky doll commercial on TV.
I know.
the new Chucky doll is out, by the way.
So let's say a high school
perfect timing.
Let's say a high school hires him. The high school hiring him, unless they are going to make it a point to have him teach a women's studies class and have him be a part of the LGBTQ efforts, right? Hiring him makes the school look as bad as him unless there's some piece that is addressing the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's the thing to me that frustrates me. Don't tell me like, okay, you're going to hire him he was at the pros, now you're going to hire him at the high school so that he can have a shot. Okay, well, what's he going to do? Coaching football at the high school level is not redemption.
Yep.
That's the part that is frustrating. We don't just say you get a lower end job.
No, but it's a start.
If it's plus, it's job plus.
Sure.
Michael Vick is a good example. Paying your time for committing for breaking a law. This is the whole idea of jails, of prisons. That's one thing. You did something wrong and you pay your time. But then as you're paying your time and when you're done, are you different?
Yep.